I don't think artists are special, but at the same time, I think we are. But if we're special, it might be in the same way that someone who is mentally retarded is special.
Yeah, there's a creative spark, and a creative spark helps drive the creative process, obviously, but there comes a point where it requires more than creativity to further the process.
You have to have something to say, and you have to have some level of talent and skill, and you have to have the ability to follow through. And if you don't have that ability to follow through, it's all out the window. Who cares how good you are if you don't do anything with it?
You have to have a field of endeavor that you're the total king and master of, and you can't worry about other people's interpretations of your world. And then if they like it, well, that's really great. If they don't, well, they just kind of have to fuck themselves.
A creative person is somebody who takes appropriate risks. They're willing to fail. You might have people who create something and have 9 unpublished novels, and you wonder, why do they keep writing these unpublished novels? Why do they do this stuff that nobody else sees? Part of being creative is this unbelievable persistence and pursuit. You hear the stories of the person who's been rejected 62 times and then gets published after their death. John Kennedy Toole, Franz Kafka, Emily Dickinson, the people who weren't appreciated in their lifetime and were misunderstood and later acknowledged as being geniuses. So many of the great ideas, of the great movies, the great books, happened from somebody who wouldn't give up. But the fact is, it's hard to not give up. It's much easier to give up. There's often what is talked of as like the Faustian bargain, that in order to really be a genius-level creator, you have to give up a certain amount of your soul. You have to be willing to spend day and night at the laboratory, or by your notepad, or on the computer writing, or painting, to the exclusion of all else. Many people can't do that. For many people, it's not worth it. I can't sit here and argue that it's worth it. An awful lot of people do that and destroy their lives. So I can't sit here and tell you, yes, follow your dream, follow your passion, abandon everything and follow this. Because that doesn't always have a happy ending.
I think the really successful artists really, what sets them apart is having the curiosity to pursue ideas that others would have thrown away. That's very important. And then having the stubbornness to see them through, even when the value wasn't clear, simply because they had this deep-seated instinct that there was something of value in what they had in mind. Those are unique people. Those are people who often change the world, because some of the most significant ideas were often the ones that at first glance seemed the most trivial, or the most pointless, or the most insane.
I think our need to interpret the world and to make sense of the world is probably a deep-rooted need. And artists take that need and run with it farther than most people do. And that's what distinguishes them.
We do have some insight to offer other people. This doesn't make us like privileged or on any kind of higher caste. It means we have some sort of like almost like dysfunctionality that gives us a special insight.
It's sad because that's like, art and music and all that type of stuff is the first thing that gets cut out of schools and stuff, but that keeps you from going nuts, Listen, I may be nuts now, but I'm nuts in a way that won't get me in trouble.
It's a delicate balance between being creative and independent and being sane.
Well, it's a matter of energy.
I don't have much in the way of social skills or range as a person, So I'm lucky to be able to do this. The one time that I tried to work in a studio with other people was a catastrophe. I just don't know how to get along with other people. So I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm saying that it's me. I'm the guy who can't get along. That's why I'm lucky to be stuck up in my attic. So the world is lucky I'm stuck up in my attic.
It's not a very glamorous, as much as some people might think. I mean, 90% of your time is sitting alone in a room by yourself. It's kind of isolating and kind of boring at sometimes,
When you sit at a drawing table or at a computer coloring and do these things for hours at a time, you do a lot of soul searching. Why am I doing this? And this paper's gonna rot anyway in 20 years and this won't exist, or we might not all exist. And so you try to put this stuff in a framework of longer spans of time and what does this all mean?
I find that the limitations, the things that I've been given to push against in my life, are what have caused me to do the most growing.
You will never be satisfied with your work. I don't know anyone who is. This stuns 14-year-olds when I tell them, because they really think that the people they love are blissfully happy with their work, because they're blissfully happy with this professional's work. But it's just not like that.
The thing I most love about other artists is what they are capable of, what their potential is. It's always been about potential. My own potential, for that matter. I've never been as satisfied with what I have done as what I could do. I'm trying to make something of myself. If I could just live another 40 years, maybe I finally learn how to draw a human figure that looks human.
The way to exercise your imagination and express yourself is you can't worry about what other people think. If you worry about what other people think, then you're going to do something really trite and something that's already been done before. If you're concerned about what other people think, you've crippled yourself from the beginning.
I went to art school and there was a lot of people I knew that were tremendous artists. I mean, just incredible. And when I met them later in life, they still drew, but it was strictly, as one guy put it, I don't pick up a pencil unless I know how much I'm getting paid. So it's like the soul's not there.
Sitting down to that blank sheet of paper, what an opportunity.
I remember somebody telling me, it's like, well, somebody was a musician saying, for them there's always music in the background of everything. There's a constant stream of music, and for me, there's a constant volume turned down. There's another world going on. There's story coming through the brain at all times. And when it's time to work, you just turn up the volume and tune into it.
If you could shut off your brain, probably life would be a lot easier. But the brain just keeps going and going and going and coming up with new ideas. And my policy is, if the brain comes up with a good idea, you better implement that. Because if you're not implementing it, when you're an old man, you're gonna wish you had.
The creative person cultivates that thinking early on.
Your brain gets trained a little bit to look for the interesting side.
I have to do this. It's a compulsion. I have to go and draw now. I have to, if I don't draw the story, it's going to just keep making too much noise in my head and, distract me from other things.
The oomph from which the need to tell a story comes from, I really think comes from your will to cope with what life throws at you.
The stuff of life is all around us. How do you translate it? What do you seize on? What seizes on you? And how are you going to present it? That's the issue. Because every time you say what if, every time you say wouldn't it be cool if, anytime you say wow, that's really weird, or that's really funny, or that's really stupid, you've got a germ for a story.
And sometimes the more painful it is, the more juice we get.
People, I think, in general in our society, but especially like younger people who are getting into being cartoonists or being artists in general, they expect to be able to sit down and do stuff. And when they can't, it's not there yet, how, with the ideas or with the physical skills or anything, they get really frustrated. And it's really difficult for them to kind of come to grips with the fact that they just don't know how to do it yet.
Talent may not be that important, It doesn't really seem that way in this world,
Oh, there's a lot of talented people, but they're not creative at all.
At some point, the craftsmanship is going to have to come in, and that's the actual That's the actual work.
You have to practice, constantly, draw every day and things like that.
I was never a natural artist. I just happened to like doing it. If you like doing it, then you do it a lot. And so I did it a lot. So it's at a certain point, you do it so much that it's well, I should use this to communicate.
You'll see people out there who have less talent, but they bring more to it and use it more. There's people that are incredibly talented who just completely just don't do anything with it. And then there's people that, they may not have a lot of talent, but they've got a lot of drive. And, you see, and look at a lot of the most popular stuff out there, it's more drive than talent.
What is a creative drive? Why do we have an urge to create?
That's the mystery of the planet, right? I mean, who knows where that comes from? We see in our students who come in, every year we get between 20 and 40 students coming through in different classes. And you can see in them, they all change, they all get better, they all, work to various degrees. But you can see in them, some of them are just, they have that thing that they have, that they're gonna be doing something cool 10 years from now.
In order to really master a field, it takes about 10 years. If you look at when did a person first enter a field and when did they have their first published novel by a real press or their first symphony produced, it's almost always 10 years. Mozart was composing when he was 4 years old, but he was in his teens before he composed anything we listen to today. Steven Spielberg was making movies in his backyard when he was 11. 10 years later, he was making Hollywood movies. Being creative is about more than something being new to you. You have to make yourself an expert to make a real contribution. You need to know the rules before you can break them. If I ask you, what is 15 plus 7? And you say, fish. Is that creative? Most psychologists would argue that the answer is no. That in order for something to be creative, it must be both new and useful in some way.
I was probably into several years of being a cartoonist before I sort of woke up one day and sort of realized, almost to my surprise, I'm an artist. My name is Matt Madden. I've been doing comics for about 15 years.
My name is Jessica Abel, and I've also been doing comics for about 15 years. Choosing to be an artist, it's glamorous, certainly, or it seems glamorous when you talk to other people about it and they're impressed by it. That's nice. But that's a little teeny weeny part of life. And why does one become an artist? That's probably a big part of it, that idea that you want to be, apart and different.
So awesome, so good, not just good, funny.
You look at Robert Crumb now and you see what an enormous celebrity is, but you have to understand it. He never strived for that. None of us ever strived for that.
My name is Robert Williams.
I was one of the first 10 underground comic book artists, period. People involved in the underground comics, they weren't thinking like popularism. They weren't thinking like, well, how can I gain the interest of hundreds of thousands of people? How can I be the big celebrity? There was no thought of that ever.
I have these days where I just doubt myself so much, and I'll just spend the whole day pacing around in the studio and thinking I should not be doing comics. I should be taking care of mentally retarded children or something. My name is Craig Thompson, probably best known for Blankets, Goodbye Chunky Rice, and a travelogue I did called Carnet de Voyage. I definitely spend a large portion of my workday convincing myself that it's okay, ethically okay, to be making comics rather than doing more humanitarian work, like helping children in Africa or something. And that's still a moral quandary for me, maybe I should be helping people directly. But then by the end of this pacing neuroses, I'm able to convince myself that art does serve some sort of humanitarian need.
I like to compare comics to heroin, with heroin being probably the more accepted habit. It's very infectious. It gets into your blood and it won't let go. My name is Dan Votto, publisher, SLG Publishing. Been in business for 20 years. There's a 12-step program for heroin. People will help you get away from that. But if you're addicted to comics, whether it's reading them, collecting them, buying them, drawing them, writing them, whatever it is, there's no way out. You're done. You're going to be doing it forever.
Comics in this country have become very much a way to define oneself, either as a fan or as a creator. This is my identity. I do this. I'm Landry Walker. I write comics for Disney Adventures magazine and for Slave Labor Graphics.
I'm Eric Jones. I've been drawing everything Landry writes for the last 13 years.
It's very much like a support group. I think that, especially when you have a large group of people who do things very much for no monetary gain. I mean, even when you are making money in comics, when you break down the hours of what you're making, it's dig ditches, man. It's not worth it.
I hope to make more money. More money.
I'm convinced that we're all compelled to do it. My name is Benton Lash. I do Supernatural Law, which is a comic book published by my company, Exhibit A Press, since 1994. We're compelled to do this and to tell the stories and to entertain.
For the love and the passion of the medium, for the craft, which all sound like gay terms because we do it because we love to do it, period. My name is Kevin Eastman. I am the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja, I can't even say it, my God. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with my partner Peter Laird. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, if we give 6 copies to our aunt, or we make $1 billion, we did it because we just love to do it in the first place.
I wanted to do a comic that I could take to a convention and it'd get me laid. My name is Mike Wellman. I am the CEO and publisher of Atomic Basement Entertainment. I did this comic about these 2 chicks on the run, and yeah, you know, something I could show a girl at a convention. Hey, check it out, you know. And she would fall madly in love with me after reading it. By the time it came out, I'd fallen in love with another woman, so I'm stuck writing this comic about these 2 chicks with no specific purpose anymore.
The women make it worth a while, much more so than the money.
I had no idea how to approach a publisher. I had no idea whether my stuff would be commercially viable. I had no idea whether or not I could find an audience for it. Instead of having a goal I could pull myself towards, I just wanted to erupt from the inside out and get something onto paper and get it out there into the world. My name is Jim Woodring. I got my start by self-publishing a 16-page Xeroxed pamphlet called Jim in 1980. I thought I was going to put out one of these things a month, but I ended up putting out one a year. And I thought that I would be able to sell subscriptions and that people would tell their friends. It sounds crazy to hear me say it now, but I really thought this thing was going to go, you know?
We took the idea to Marvel and DC, and they were very polite, but they turned us down because they thought ElfQuest was too peculiar. My name is Wendy Peeney, and I've been involved in comics one way or another for close to 30 years now. What it came down to was the old little red hen legend that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. So we set about to teach ourselves how to do a comic.
I was definitely naive going into it. I didn't think it through. I didn't look into it with the kind of sense you should look into that sort of thing. My name's Scott Alley. I'm an editor for Dark Horse Comics. I've been there since 1994, and before that I was a self-publisher. Been doing and publishing comics for 12 years. But what would have happened if I'd done all the research? I wasn't a businessman. The amount of money that I had to do it was enough to do this modest attack that I did, but had I known more, I just might have been more intimidated about the commitment.
My discovery of an indie comics world was an eye-opener, to say the least. My name is Scott Mills. I've been a cartoonist for about 10 years, seeing other people like myself creating comics on their own with regular typing paper, regular pens, black and white, seeing that yes, you can do this. I don't know why I thought I could do it. You know, it was a little bit like the R Gang scenario, where it was some buddies and we all wanted to draw comics and we had no idea what we were doing. My name is Shannon Wheeler. I draw a comic book called Too Much Coffee Man. I've been self-publishing for 11 or 12 years. This friend of mine moved into a house and the previous tenant was a printer and the guy moved out, and so there was a printing press in the house. So we thought,
let's print our own comic books on this printing press. And so it was just this aw shucks, we've got the barn, let's put on a show kind of attitude. We really had no idea what we were doing. Absolutely no clue.
I decided to become a publisher when I realized that my skills as a cartoonist really sucked. My name is Brett Warnock, and I'm with Top Shelf Productions. I've been publishing now for 10 years. I knew that I wouldn't be able to follow my whim if I moved to New York and tried to break in as a gopher and get coffees for this editor or that editor. I could never do that. So I said, why not? Let's just let's publish comics. It's what I love. It's what I love more than anything, except now that I have my new little son, so he trumps everything. But
all of my family are either independent professionals or small business people, one way or the other. My name is Carla Speed McNeil. I've been doing Finder since the fall of '97. I wouldn't have gotten near so much support from my family if I had gone off and tried to work my way up through the big companies and then tried to branch out. I just would have gotten a lot of stern lectures about how you never get anywhere working for the man.
Now, traditionally in comic books, the company owned the work. It was all work for hire from the 1930s right through the 1970s and into the 1980s. My name's Gary Groth. I'm the publisher of Fantagraphics Books and the editor of the Comics Journal, a magazine devoted to criticism and journalism of the comics profession. We wanted to treat creators like literary authors. We wanted to make sure that they retained the rights to their work, the copyright to their work. We wanted to encourage them to express themselves, to do their own work outside the boundaries of traditional comic books.
I have a hard time defining what I actually do just to people. I mean, alternative comics, I guess, but like everything's alternative now. Everything's as crazy and obscene as it could be. You see what's on TV, especially late at night, cartoons with like a pig with a boner. I'm like, this is on TV. What's alternative now? My name is Tony Millionaire. I am a cartoonist. I do a strip called Makis. Even though it's a hideous term, people know what you're talking about when you say graphic novel. You'll be saying, well, I do sort of an independently owned comic book. It's not a superhero. And they're like, what? It's a graphic novel. And my grandmother would go, oh, okay, I know what you mean. Graphic novels, oh, those are big now. So I use it now. I do graphic novels.
People aren't ready for the term comic book, and so people say graphic novel because it sounds like more intellectual. But really, it's not intellectual. It's more dumb than comic books. My name is Trevor Alexopoulos, and I am a cartoonist. I do comic books. It would be like if we called movies movie literature, movie novels, photographic theater. It's trying to gain some kind of intellectual cachet from a previous art form.
I honestly don't think a whole lot of people even realize that comics are even being made anymore. My name is Eric Powell, and I created The Goon, which is published by Dark Horse. I have a friend who is a writer, and he's written some comics, and he would tell someone I write comics, and they go, oh, they still make those?
Comics are really the underground, the bleeding edge culture for art and entertainment. I'm James Syme, proprietor of San Francisco's Isotope the Comic Book Lounge. I pimp comics for a living. That's what I do, 24/7. Comics are kind of where art and literature and trash culture all collide headfirst with each other. The closest analogies that I've ever been able to come up with are punk rock and hip hop, right? That's the stuff that's down and dirty. It's the basement level. It's easy to get into.
I think I may have gone into comics first and foremost because I'm a control freak. I'm Scott McCloud, I'm a cartoonist and author, and I've been making comics since 1984. The fact that comics is one of the only visual mediums of storytelling that we have in which one person can really do it all is tremendously compelling, and that singular vision I think has led to some of the more unique strengths of comics.
It's the one-man band, one-man show that's going on. My name is Linda Medley. The comic that I write, draw, and letter is Castle Waiting. You do need to be able to make whatever visual that you are doing readable. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can draw perfect faces and perfect hands and perfect anything. Something can be readable if it's only two shapes. And if as long as it conveys the message and the story and the feeling that you're trying to convey, then you've succeeded.
And no one sits there and goes, huh, you know, a cat that drinks coffee and eats pizza, you know, that's not real. No one sits there and questions comics. They automatically buy into it. As soon as you start reading it, you buy into it. My name's Keith Knight. I do the K Chronicles. I've been doing it for well over 10 years. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can put it on the moon, you can put it in Egypt, you can have it take place in your stomach, you can have it any historical time, and it's like, it's a budget of $1.50, you know, for the pen and the piece of paper. You create something and you're in complete control.
This is all I want to do. It never dawned on me that there is anything else to do. My name is Eric Larson. I'm the publisher of Image Comics. I also create a book for Image Comics called Savage Dragon. If I wasn't doing this, I would probably be doing the same thing I did when I was in 5th grade, just sitting at home and drawing comics for myself, which is really sad to think about it. 43-year-old man sitting at home drawing comics on his dining room table, but there you go.
For you to be creative in anything, at anything, requires 3 basic things. You need motivation. You need the drive to do something creative, the motivation to begin. You could be the most creative person in the world, but if you never get up off your couch, we're not going to know. You need a certain level of intelligence. I'm not talking being a genius, but you can't be a carrot. Carrots aren't creative. And finally, you need the appropriate environment. A good environment will nurture and enable creativity at all times. People often have a need to compartmentalize. People like to make quick shortcuts in their mind. They love to separate things based on creative medium, domain, or genre. Within any medium, you will have things that are good, and you'll have things that are not as good. Now, people won't say, I don't listen to music. People don't say, I don't go to movies. But people will say, I don't read comic books. And what this does is that it cuts them off from a primary source of pleasure and artistic creation. Within every creative medium, you have prime examples of good artistic work. Things that could hold up across any genre, domain, or creative medium. Indeed, one of the personality factors most associated with creativity is being open to new experiences. This could be trying new food, going new places, or experiencing a creative medium you've never tried before.
Whether we call it comics or not, that idea of telling stories with pictures is not new.
The human race has been drawing pictures and painting on cave walls for 35,000 years.
The actual function of words and pictures combined into something that we could see as comics started centuries ago.
You could take that back to the ancient Egyptians. That's easy. That's totally easy. I think it's a really fundamental art form.
Because it takes no interpretation. I don't need to, if you draw, you can draw like somebody ugly and everybody can look at it and immediately know that they're ugly. You don't need to describe in purple prose how ugly they are.
It's just universal language. It's like, in a way, comics is just like road signs or something. It's this iconic, simple language that anybody who can see can understand.
Which is why during World War II, they were using comics to train the military how to fire guns. Right? Because you understand, they're like, oh, here's some words and here's some pictures that Will Eisner drew of a guy shooting a Nazi. And you're like, oh, great, I understand that. And I can work this rifle now.
Sequential art, telling stories with pictures, writing with pictures.
Panel to panel progression of what is going on.
That's the medium of comics. And that encompasses comic strips, comic books, graphic novels, manga, bande dessinée, which is what they call comics in Europe, or web comics.
It doesn't have anything to do with the length or the format.
Comic strips, comic books, graphic novels, it's all comics.
They may refer to different styles, different formats, different traditions, different industries, but they're all formats that tap into the power of the art form itself.
I always called comics the autistic child of the arts.
The short bus of the art world. Totally. Yeah, there is some sort of socially crippled element.
To this day, if you say, oh, I do comics, you know, people cock their heads. Comics, really? Gee.
It's funny, at the very beginning, I wasn't attracted to comics, maybe partially because I didn't see anything particularly ambitious or imaginative about them. At the time I was reading science fiction, I was interested in surrealism. I was a weird kid. But I didn't see comics as a good example of either writing or art.
Its older siblings, like literature and film and painting, would look at their little sibling drooling in the corner, and they go, oh, look at it, it's awful. But then they go, but do you see what he just did? It was brilliant. Let's see it again. And then the kid would like throw up or something.
I have a cousin, I talked to her about this when she was 10. Asked her if she ever read any comics. She's like, no, my mom says comics are for stupid people. It's like, damn. So I gave her a whole bunch of comics and told her her mother was an idiot. Her mother is an idiot. I mean, she spends a lot, you know. And it's true. So, end of interview.
Low-grade inherent aspect of comics is an important part of the engine that makes them run. And the best comics have that in them. You know, when comics get too pretentious and too adult and too serious, they stop working as comics. You have to at least work with that juvenile aspect of it in some way. If you ignore it, you end up with Classics Illustrated or something.
Of course there's goofy elements. And there's goofy elements in football, for God's sakes, but no one calls them geeks. Well, maybe you're afraid to because you'll get punched in the face, but...
People just say, oh, you know, they automatically think less of you if you say you read a comic because those are for kids, you know?
And it's hard for us as a medium to go, no, this isn't for kids, when you've got guys with underwear on the outside of their pants. You know, it's really tough. No, take this seriously.
Only in America. The medium has so much more respect in Europe and Asia. People don't think twice of honoring the medium as highly as they would honor film or any other creative medium.
The history of comics is always up for debate. I've traveled to other countries that are very interested in comics. They always seem to have a homegrown favorite that they count as the first comic.
It really blossomed in America in the late 19th and 20th century with newspaper strips.
It's an American art form that came into being during the Depression era.
Comics sold in the millions in this country. You know, World War II was a huge boom for the comics industry.
Same as jazz. It was created here. You know, there's precedents in other countries, but really the comic strip as a format and as an art form is born and bred in the U.S.
So for all you patriots out there, it's good. If you want to support America, read a comic.
It's a gold mine of entertainment that America is starting to see. I mean, it's all over the place.
Many people came up to us at conventions and said, like men, came up and said, yeah, I bought blankets and I took it home and I had it on a kitchen table and my wife picked it up and she read the whole thing in one sitting and she's never read a comic book before.
My uncle, who's 80 years old, you know, is going into comic book shops.
You know, the mainstream has begun to appreciate comics, and the New York Times has just begun for the first time in its history to have comics in its publication.
These women are out on a gallery crawl, and they're hitting all of the art galleries in my neighborhood. And they walk by, and we're a new store. They look in the window, and there's art hanging on the wall. It looks like a gallery. They think it's a gallery. They walk in the door, and they're like, is this an art gallery? I'm like, yes, it is. Come on in, we have comics. And, you know, from there on. And now one woman's reading Cerebus, which is not what I would really expect a 50-year-old woman to be excited about, but she loves it, so rock on.
The irony is comics itself as a medium is so marginalized that the things that are mainstream in mainstream comics are really, to the rest of the world, are really marginal. Like most people don't want to read Daredevil comics. Most people would rather read postmodern French philosophy than read Daredevil. But in comics themselves, that's mainstream.
The mainstream publishers of comics seem to be looking for very specific properties.
Their interests are in Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Captain America.
Assembly line comics, you know, as some people call them, with a writer, penciler, colorist, letterer, different cover artist doing the cover.
They're not risk takers. They're not trying to communicate. They're trying to make money. And they're not trying to expand the consciousness of anyone.
They've never been interested in doing work that reflects contemporary life, serious existential issues, independent work, small, intimate stories, autobiographical work. Without smaller independent publishers, starting with underground comics in the 1960s, this work would never have seen the light of day.
There was three factors that brought about underground comics. The first factor was an enormous drug culture. The second factor was the Vietnam War. And the third element was there was an enormous amount of artists and comic book fans that were really vengeful against the outlawing of certain comic books in the early 50s. In the early 50s, there was a Senate investigation.
Frederick Wortham wrote the book, Seduction of the Innocent, putting so much of the blame on comic books and focusing quite a bit on the EC comics.
The trusted doctor out there going, comics will destroy your child. Comics will turn your child into a juvenile delinquent.
Exactly like today they're talking about video games. There's the exact same force of energy that was applied on comic books. So a lot of the very, very good comic books were completely run out of business.
Even though, you know, ultimately there was little legal effect. You wound up with that little germ of an idea being planted in people's heads. Parents going, well, I remember hearing somewhere that comics were bad for you.
They set up their own internal system, headed by John Goldwater, who was the publisher of Archie Comics. The Comics Code Authority had this ridiculous criteria for what is and isn't worthy of the stamp of approval. It was like if you didn't have the stamp of approval, it was like the kiss of death. Let me start with I'm sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I'll have Chris. What is an underground comic? It's not somebody subterranean, I would think, but.
Oh, very good question.
Average young person today would, you'd ask them about, well, are you familiar with underground comics? And then they would stammer for a minute and go, well, oh yeah, I saw the Crumb movie, and that just like kind of wraps up the whole thing.
Underground comics were published by underground publishers for the most part. There were about 4 or 5 of them. They all started around between 68 and 72.
And they would find their own method of distribution, what was called head shops back then, where you could buy drug paraphernalia.
And when I went into this head shop in Rockport, Massachusetts, and I saw the Zap comics down there, I was like, what's this? And I took them home. S. Clay Wilson was in there, and would you ever read S. Clay Wilson? The Checker Demon? That stuff is just so amazing. I love one scene where a motorcycle gang is riding down the road and they go through a time warp, a time space warp, and they land on the deck of a pirate ship. And then there's just this fight with chains and wrenches against cutlasses and axes. It's the funniest thing.
These were psychedelic drug comic books that were experimental and bohemian.
These guys didn't have editors, they didn't have publishers that told them, dude, you need to draw drug comics, you need to draw overtly sexual comics, you need to draw this kind of thing. It was sort of like these guys wrote ideas that they wanted to do.
I never liked violent comics before that. But if it was done in such a funny way as that, and they're all smoking pot, and I thought, this is great, this is just like me. If I was really an asshole.
We were actually creating culture. If we hadn't done these dirty funny books, then you couldn't use 4-letter words in public. See? We moved culture.
They destroyed the system. They broke the system completely. And their comics end up being like not just culturally important for decades, but really like the starting gate for so much that followed.
Comics don't have to be an adventure. They don't have to be, you know, just sort of fluffy. They could be substantial.
Publishers that started in the late 70s, early 80s were generally called independent or alternative publishers because the day of the underground had simply gone by the wayside. They weren't underground anymore.
There weren't too many examples. In fact, there were almost none of independent comics at the time. There was First Kingdom, there was Star Reach, and I think Cerebus, the aardvark, was just starting up.
Those first 10 issues of Cerebus were not going to win any art awards. They were very, very crude. But they had wit, and they had a passion, and they had a verve to them that, at the time, the color contemporaries of Cerebus did not have at all.
The sales just kept going up and up and up. There was one point, I think it was around our 18th issue, we were selling 100,000 copies. That was in the early 80s. We were up there with X-Men.
Many people at the time felt that comics had reached a new flowering, a new renaissance.
All those guys who were part of the black and white comic revolution were guys who loved comics when they were younger. Could remember when you could go to the drugstore with $1 and get 10 comics and take them all to the beach and spend the whole day reading them. They were trying to take a childhood pleasure and update it, make it something that they could appreciate as adults.
The first independent comic I got into was Ninja Turtles, back before it was a cartoon and all that. And you know, there's these 4 turtles that drank beer and fought each other and stuff.
Back in the early days, Pete would always elbow me when I said, look, we stole some of our best ideas from everybody that we appreciated and loved so much. We copied Cerebus, we copied New Mutants, we copied Daredevil, we copied Ronin, and just kind of whipped it up in a blender.
That came along and sold ridiculously well, unprecedentedly well, and you had suddenly a bandwagon.
There was a speculator market where people were like, oh, this is going to be worth a ton of money. So they created this false value, and people started just following suit and trying to create as many things as they could.
In 1986, you were looking at the second death of the comic book industry. You began to see this slide and the dissolution of these companies that were barely viable in the first place.
One of my favorite quotes is Eisner going, I've seen this business die 5 times already. And it's true. It comes back all the time. There's something about it.
One theory of creativity is the propulsion model, which looks at how does a creative act change the field.
The first level is the idea of replication. In replication, you see where the field is, and you reinvent it. You do the same thing that's been done before, you just modify it slightly.
There's also forward movement, where you see where the field is going, and you do exactly what it's ready for.
You predict what people will want, and you give it to them.
Finally, there's synthesis, and that's taking 2 different ideas and combining them.
Different fields that nobody's connected, and you connect them. You create a product that takes elements of one field, elements of another, and you create a new field.
Independent comics, like independent movies, like independent anything, it's always no money, no budget, a personal vision, a personal drive, a commitment to the craft, a commitment to the form, a passion that they've had since they were 2 before they even knew it.
I think that people who describe themselves as alternative publishers are more thinking in terms of content. You know, like we say with alternative film or alternative music. The idea is that this is about something other than the usual mainstream subjects. This is in a style that's different from usual mainstream styles. This is something that actually aspires to some other artistic goal than just entertaining. Independence is more of a business distinction. Independent from whom? You know, usually the assumption is independent from certain well-known corporate entities.
When I think independent comics, I think pure creativity, you know, because there's no limitation there, you know?
You don't have any crutches. You don't have characters that have been established over the years. You don't have generic plot lines that you can fall back on. The creator has only his sensibility and his skill.
Doing things that they truly believe in and for personal reasons, and that it overlaps with an audience is as much coincidence as anything else.
If the word independent's really going to mean anything, it seems like it should apply to
Really small press. You know, going down to Kinko's, printing up 200 or 300 copies of your comic and folding it and stapling it yourself and bringing it to conventions.
Who would rather be the captains of their own destiny, you know? They'd rather put out something small that nobody will see than become part of a bigger machine.
What we call independent comics are the comics for the people. And what we call mainstream comics are comics that are solely catered to aging, middle-aged fanboys who just have never grown up. And I'm one of them.
We didn't come along that much later than the black and white boom in the mid-'80s. It was only a handful of years later. By that time, the industry had busted.
And been on the rise again.
That would be the Image Comics explosion in the early 90s.
Simultaneous to the Image Comics explosion, there was a mini comics revolution of a sort, which we just happened to stumble into without any design.
Mini comics are just photocopied, handmade books.
Probably has fewer pages. More than likely it's black and white.
It's a term that came from the fact that they tended to be smaller than a standard comic book size.
The big secret of, or not so secret fact of self-publishing is that people always have friends in copy shops and
I
get
would
good
go
deals.
at night to an office.
Or an office,
A friend of mine worked in this office at night. Get
Right.
in there, make the copies.
Yeah, it's a very economically
I brought the
feasible medium in that way.
Then you take all the pieces of paper and you bring it at home, and then you buy a 6-pack for your roommates and some pot, and then you say, hey guys, after they smoke it and get drunk, you pull out a stapler and a bunch of things, say, you fold, you staple, and I'll drink.
When I did mini comics, I was stapling them myself. It's like 10,000 printed mini comics, and the printer's like, oh, I'll give you a discount if you staple them. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I'm there for, like 3 days stapling them. But, and I saved, I think it was like $150 or something. But, it was a lot of money at the time.
It's been so long, I can't even remember how people found out about it, but I got a lot of fan mail, considering I was only putting out a couple hundred of these things. People sent me all kinds of crack-brain junk and all kinds of letters and interesting things. I made some lifelong friends through this thing. It was like we were taking pieces of our philosophy and our attitude and putting it on paper and passing them around, this kind of phantom party where people were making introductions.
There was a certain amount of satisfaction in producing it myself, in self-publishing, because I had controlled everything, and it was just fun. But it took way too much time from actually drawing the comic with all the business that I had to take care of.
You got to spend so much time promoting, so much time processing orders, making sure that you're on schedule, doing all that, busy work, that you're exhausted. By the time you actually get to the drawing table, and you're always wondering about, what did I forget? Most of us do not have any kind of business sense. We simply don't. And a part of it is an underlying prejudice against the whole concept of commerce. We want to do it for a career, but we don't want to, don't want to really get into the whole process of selling because people are supposed to come to us.
My assumption was I'm going to hand this thing to, I thought, when I do Art Babe #1, I'm going to go to the Chicago Comic-Con and meet Gary Groth and give him my comic, and he's going to be like, you're a genius, and publish me immediately. I did not intend to be a self-publisher. It wasn't my dream in any way. I just wasn't good enough yet.
In the past, I self-published because that was like the most direct way to get my comics out there, rather than waiting around for somebody else to publish me, like, or expecting people to publish me. I publish myself.
It's like everything else, you gotta work at it. I mean,
Dude, you're gonna be standing, you know, at the bus stop for a long time if you're waiting for somebody to give you a ride, you know? You gotta build your own car at first, I think, so.
I pitched an idea to somebody for an animated movie. It was a very tall building that you went to a certain floor, number 8, that they were all vice presidents. I don't care if you were a secretary, but they had a floor of vice presidents. You walk down the hall, vice president, vice president. I just saw the guy, and he's like a vice president. And I said, well, it's kind of like a Kirish with Fire and Ice, but it's not this. It's this new wave of anime that's coming in that I think we do an anime style movie with sort of a more of an American style script that I think is great. And I just saw him going kind of blank, and he's going like, okay. And I said, well, you've seen Akira, right? And he's like, no. And I said, well, you've seen Ghost in the Shell? And he's like, no. And I said, have you seen Fire and Ice? No. Have you seen Heavy Metal? No. Have you seen any Bakshi movies? Have you seen... You're the executive that I've scheduled a meeting with that are the animation guy, but you've never seen any of these movies. Anything. You're not a genre. You're not a geek that goes to the video store every week or the comic book store every week, and why are you in this job? And he just looked at me and goes like, well, that's kind of personal. I said, well, no, it's not. You're vice president. I'm a geek since I was 7, and this is what I live for, and this is what I'm telling you, that what I think fans will love. And I'm giving to you that's going to make a decision on what you think is popular, and you don't have any idea.
Any creative filmmaker or artist is basically trying to find a way to trick the boss, get his own thing out.
When I first came out to San Francisco, I didn't do comics right away. I did like a public access TV show. I was doing a comedy show, and I couldn't pay everybody, and it was hard to get everyone, you know, together and all that stuff. So doing comics was just like the cheap version of doing that, you know?
When you go to see Star Wars, a movie like Star Wars or something like that, you don't walk out of the theater thinking, I could do that. Or maybe one in 50,000 people that see that movie and that think, I could do that. But if you walk into a comic book shop and you have any ability to draw and you have any story whatsoever, then you look at the comics, the first thing most people are going to think is, I can do this.
Where I control the lighting, the director, the actors, the pacing of the story, good, bad, or ugly, was all I needed was a piece of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, pencil, and an ink pen.
Because it's a visual medium, you're not totally dependent on somebody else's imagination too, which is, when you're reading a book, especially a book that requires you having some imagination, it can be, everybody can kind of come out of it with something different. With a comic, it's like, no, this is what the guy looks like. He's green, he's got this fin on his head, and he doesn't shave his back.
With film, with effects-driven movies, because now a lot of movies can give you an image as fantastic as comics, but no matter how good the special effects are, it still sort of begs you not to believe it, because it's fake, even if it's Jurassic Park and it's these flawless-looking dinosaurs.
If the dinosaurs didn't look real, everyone would be like, this is a piece of crap. If you want to film something in Egypt, you either have to fly everyone to Egypt or have a soundstage or something that looks like Egypt. Where in cartooning, you just do a triangle and a line, and some dots and a sun, and then you're in Egypt. And no one's going to sit there and go, that's not Egypt,
It doesn't try to get you to accept it's real, it just tells you the story and you meet it on its terms.
It's the immediacy. It's thought to finished product, one step, boom, there it is. That is that's essentially what every creator wants.
Oh, and I'm not a popularist, I'm not interested in placating an enormous audience for money. That didn't do anything for me.
So you don't
There's no way I couldn't even try to do that. I don't have the personality to sit down and figure out what people want. I don't care what people want.
There's a primal sort of scream that this is what I wanted to do, and here it is, and fuck you if you don't like it.
I'm one of those people who I just could never hold down a job. I just couldn't do it. It's 9 o'clock. I have to get up. All right. Now you have to go to the office. You're in the office, and a guy walks up behind you. Says, "Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing?" I'm like, I quit. I would quit in a week. I couldn't take any job. I got to do what now? And you have to. That's your job. I've had jobs like that, and I never lasted.
I was fortunate enough when I was young. I did an enormous amount of hard work in different jobs, a truck driver, and a short order cook, and forklift operator, and worked for a carnival, dishwasher, bus boy, drove tractors, and did a whole variety of difficult jobs. So I have a real good perspective of what work is and how it's much easier, even no matter how hard the artwork is, it's far better than going out and laying pipe or something like that.
All the work that I do comes out of me being a cartoonist, whether it's as a teacher, helping to edit some comics, doing coloring for Marvel and DC. All the jobs I do come out of being a cartoonist and are based on the fact that, oh, he's a cartoonist. But the thing that always falls through the cracks and the hardest to make time for, because it doesn't really make money, is the comics itself.
My policy has always been very low overhead. Like, I don't drive, I don't have kids. I have a very supportive wife who understands the artist's needs, so she gives me plenty of room to do it and pursue it. So I'm very fortunate that way.
I have a job that pays my bills, and I do comics because I fucking love comics. I just love them.
For me, being a cartoonist started when I was working at a grocery department store, stocking shelves and mixing paint. And I would go to work at 5:30 in the morning, and I tell myself, I'm a cartoonist. That was the first part. And I would, when I got home, I would work all night on comics, and I was not making a penny. I was a store clerk, I was a stock boy, but I was a cartoonist. And of course, that's not enough. You're not a cartoonist purely by calling yourself that. You have to do something. But for me, the first step was deciding I was. And I didn't need to go to school or, earn money or get paid to do it to prove myself. Just, I had to do it.
In my late 20s, I got hit with arthritis really, really bad. And I was really crippled with it through my 30s. And so, on top of everything else, in the early 80s, as I'm coming towards finishing the classic quest, here I am doing this work and living in chronic pain at the same time, and just driving myself through it. So it was like I would call it a powerful initiation, where you actually have to go through some physical pain to burst out of who you were into who you're going to be.
What is creativity? As a scientist, I can tell you how we can measure creativity. I can tell you what creative people are like. I can talk about how different types of creativity are related to each other. I can tell you how we can define creativity. I can tell you how we should implement creativity into schools or into businesses or into our own life. But I can't tell you where creativity comes from. Maybe 100 years ago, somebody would have said Freud, and that creativity was really just repressed desires for our mother. Now, after studying brain and behavior, we've come full circle. We don't know. And I come from the starting point that everybody's creative, at some level. Everybody has the ability to be creative at some level. The key is not so much where does that kernel come from, but how do we nurture that kernel and get the most from it.
Stephen King says that asking where his ideas come from, that's the worst question he gets. You know, where it's like because he's like, I don't know how to answer that. You know, it's kind of the same thing. I just think we're kind of I don't know. It's kind of, where do the ideas come from?
From my head. That's where ideas come from. I don't order them from somewhere. I don't go online and go, where will I get my idea next?
Yeah, that is a stupid question.
Comes from God.
Generally, it wakes me up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, wow.
I get ideas from things that I'm inspired by.
It comes from that deep, dark little corner of your head that you're afraid to let people look at.
You know, I've never thought about that before. I really don't know where ideas come from or what creativity is. You've given me something to think about here.
You know, I think if anyone ever answered that question, all ideas will be gone, because it just comes from, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I really don't know. That's why I didn't continue to draw comics myself. I ran out of ideas, you know, truly.
Well, they come from your experience, and your experience can mean so many different things. They can come from,
Everyone dreams. You may have a dream tonight. You go to sleep tonight, you wake up in a great palace. Not a palace that you saw in a film, not a palace you saw in a painting, a palace you created that moment in your mind. That's very creative. That's creation. That's an idea.
Ideas for some people come out from the cosmos, it seems, and that's that creative, like, I'm doing this one for me vision shit.
I really feel like artists are vessels for their ideas. Ideas kind of choose you, like some sort of strange spirits that come and haunt you, and then you have to be like, you have to submit to their whims, and you really don't ultimately have any control. It's
like those whales that get misdirected and they wind up swimming up onto the beach. You know, there's your idea. You've got this great sea of subconscious, and things are just moving around in there, and every now and again something beaches itself and dies there for you to dissect. And that's sort of what it feels like. Get it down on the page and you're like, well, this is sort of a gross representation of what was swimming in my subconscious, but here you are in the museum of a page, frozen, showing other people.
It's almost like I'm channeling it, and I've been channeling it for close to 30 years now. It's like maybe it's another life that I'm living right now in a parallel universe. I don't know. But for something to stay as solid as it has for all those years without any hitches, and to just keep flowing, there's something very real about it.
I have a bad memory sometimes, but I pretty much know everything that's happened in my life, and it's like I will get snips of dialogue and just like ideas of things. It's like I never experienced that, and I don't know anyone who has experienced that. Why would I think of that? Why would I think that was a good idea, And I can only say it's from somewhere else.
There are certain artists who just have this kind of world vision from the very beginning, and it just sort of comes streaming out of them, and they have no problem. But I think those are comparatively rare. I think, it's more common to have to struggle with trying to, find some way to.
Everybody, every day, comes up with enough ideas and enough life experience to keep a writer or an artist busy for the rest of their life. Some of the best movies, novels, fill in the blanks are about ordinary experience, because there's always something happening somewhere of vast significance to someone.
The most modest, meager little thing can be where the idea comes from, but then your entire life is what boosts the idea into being as big, or as, whether it's going to be a 3 stanza long poem or going to be a 200-page graphic novel.
Things feed off each other so much that it's hard to. I don't think you can take any one thing and go, yeah, this came out of nowhere. It all kind of comes out of what came before.
But the trick is never to come up with someone else's idea, is to avoid other people's ideas and to avoid trends.
Ideas don't come from any one place. They're a process that culminates in a work you can hold in your hand. And it's got to do with...
I'm at 212.
It involves a combination of sensibility and talent and vision and the ability to coordinate all of these things and create a lasting work of art.
Here's the thing, if all it came down to was a creative drive, why put it all at all? It gets back to put it in your sketchbook and don't let anyone see it. It's not the creative drive, it's not the creative spark that makes people put it through a printing process and distribute it to thousands of people. That's not creativity there. There's something else going on. You can't say, well, isn't it all about the creativity? Sure, it is. The creation part, but not the distribution part, not the advertising part, not the sales part. That's not creativity. That's something else and what's going on there.
Insanity, I guess. That's the only thing I can think is like, why would somebody, with masochism? I don't know. Why have a conversation? Why not just stand on a street corner and talk to yourself? Why talk to a person? Well, because that's what language is for.
Why doesn't like a writer just write a novel and then put it in a drawer and forget about it? Like, most people are guided by a mix of self-gratification and gratification from other people.
It's it's egotistical. It's like the same feeling that an actor gets when they get on stage. Hey, don't forget to look at me. I'm doing this, everybody.
If you wake up, there's an idea. It's like if you stay in bed for the day, there's an idea. If you get out of bed and you examine why you put your right foot into the slipper first as opposed to the left foot, there's an idea. If you don't have an idea, you're not trying. You're not trying. That's simple as that. If you go through the day and live your life, you will have an idea, no matter what it is.
How do you not have ideas? I don't know how a person doesn't.
Yeah.
I think most people do have ideas, they just don't know how to execute them.
There's no big secret. It's a lot of work.
I mean, my real problem, and this is true of a lot of cartoonists, is not finding ideas, it's finding the time to execute the last 26 ideas we have.
Ideas aren't worth a damn. Everyone has ideas. What do you do with that idea? It's, people had an idea of someone with powers far beyond those of a mortal man before Superman came about. But it took Siegel and Schuster to really bring that home.
When people sit there and go, oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body, blah, 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 that's crap.
When you work creatively, when what you do is to have ideas, you hone it more, and you wind up thinking more about that outside stimuli.
It's a muscle. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised, and it'll get stronger and stronger as you continue to use it.
It's like any other kind of mental exercise, I would say. As he said, the more you do it, the easier it's going to come to you, generally speaking, unless you suck, and then your ideas will suck. So don't suck. Yeah, try not to suck.
I know this very, very talented and creative guy, and every time I see him, he gives me this litany of all these great concepts. And 10 years, I have yet to see one because he's good at the talk and not at the doing. And it's like, unless you can finish and produce and, hey, look at me, here it is, doesn't mean anything.
That's part of that bogus, the whole myth of artists that is so damaging, I think, especially for young people who are trying to become artists, this idea that they have to be these, the torture genius idea.
I go and I create an original work. Yeah, okay.
That your ideas have to be this, inspiration
Right,
that comes to
inspiration
you from nowhere.
is a super damaging idea, I think. The idea that it's going to somehow come out of the sky and you're going to have this idea and you're going to be able to put it down on your painting or your comic or whatever, and it's just going to be like, bam, you got it. It never works that way. Never. Even if you have a really good nugget of an idea one morning when you wake up, you know, lucky you, you still have to build it into something.
I compare it sometimes to reassembling a dinosaur from its bones. You know, there's not necessarily a sequence. You don't necessarily have to start at the head and work down to the tail. You can find any piece of the dinosaur at any time. And gradually the shape of the dinosaur comes into focus. You may be missing a lot of vertebrae. You may be missing a lot of tibias, whatever. But you can begin to infer where the rest of that skeleton is. No matter what order you find those bones, eventually the shape of the beast begins to become obvious to you.
That's what makes me love art so much. What makes me love creativity and love writing is that you find out that all the pieces fit perfectly.
90% of the time it's just labor, though, where you're just sitting there and forcing something and working something and sweating something, but then just every now and again you're just hit by this weird, you know, nebulous, and it's like, oh wow, thank you, that's great. That's what I live for, is just waiting for those moments where you just know you've just hit it square, you know, you've thrown that dart and it hit the bullseye, and you're like, oh, that felt really good, you know. You knew as you were throwing it, you're gonna hit the bullseye, and you're just trying to replicate that same feeling over and over again. Just wait and hope.
You where creativity comes from. I think everybody has the fly.
If you're making a movie, no matter how independent it is, well, you can make a really independent movie, but chances are it's gonna look like shit. Like if you just got one guy and a camera that goes around, oh, I'm sorry.
You're not serious with that question. Where do ideas come from? They come from everywhere. There's nowhere they don't come from. What do you mean, where do they come from?
Sometimes I feel that there's a certain dignity lacking in the comics field that is present in other professions that seem a little more adult, perhaps. But still, I feel it's where I belong, you know?
This is so interesting. Gee, what do I think of all this?
I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but...
Not really. I just realized you've had your badge on this entire thing.
The dog.
Yeah.
I must kill the dog.
Well, where's the felch? Where's the felch at? There's a felch in here. Where's that at?
This is not a business for an adult. I really don't think it is. Although, I guess, you know, I can still kind of pin my hopes on growing up someday.
I'm an artist. Look, it's art. Yeah, it's maybe art, but it's shitty comics. Or maybe really shitty comics and it's not art. Or maybe really good comics and it's shitty art. Right?
I know another person who just keeps saying, I just don't get it. I don't understand. How are you supposed to read these things? There's words over here, there's words over here. What? You know, I'm sorry, these people are dumb. Just idiots.
So comics are for smart people?
No, comics are for people who aren't morons. That doesn't mean they're smart, that just means they're not really, really stupid.
I'll come up with an idea that's so asinine and so ridiculous that it's even embarrassing to myself.
When I put out my first issue, I was thinking that, Jesus Christ, when people fucking see this book, they are going to shit. I mean, I thought it was going to be like, you know, buildings were gonna come crumbling down.
There's enough people in this world that for each one of us, you can get 2,000 people to be really into your stuff. You're set. If you can convince 2,000 people that you're Jesus, you'll do okay. They'll just keep on throwing money at you.
This is a great way to get my propaganda out there. You know,
If I use that out of context and make
You get a bunch of goofballs coming up to you saying, "Oh, oh, what do you think?" And then this is the best one though, when nerds come up here. What do you think about? My wife is always laughing at me about this. She'll stand right next to me, and some guy will come up. What do you think about when Mr. Bear was riding on the top of the moon in Death Quest 4000? I'm like, what? What's Death Quest 4000? No, you're kidding, right? You never read Death Quest 4000?
Yeah, I once saw two guys like just have a yelling fest because one guy aced him out of writing a Wolverine miniseries. The idea that you're now on the level of middle management wonks in an office arguing over, the boss's assignment and over Wolverine. I mean, that to me is not a good way to spend adulthood.
I don't care how much of a wuss you are. You don't get struck terror into your heart when somebody shows up with underwear on the outside of his pants. That just doesn't happen, The whole I put on the cape and I got the cowl thing and I'm jumping out and I'm going to scare you. It's like, man, not with the underwear, you're not doing it. Not that kind of scared. I mean, it's a different kind of scared. And not the kind you want, Batman. And your friend with the green tights and the bare legs, that's not helping.
It goes without saying that comics have a lot of stigmas to overcome, and that's at the risk of coming across as I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I was almost getting see, I get real crazy and nervous.
Why? You need to do some push-ups, work some energy out.
What was that question again?
You can like kick me in the balls, and that can be like the final shot of the movie. Like have like a blooper reel at the end. I always love blooper reels in movies.